Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and today I'm here with Pip Ballantine and T. Morris, both award-winning authors, podcasters, and today we're talking about one of their many books, Phoenix Rising, a Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences novel. So welcome Pip and T.
Hi. Good morning.
Afternoon, wherever.
Yes, that too.
So why don't you start off by telling me a bit about the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences book and who's going to enjoy Phoenix Rising?
Mm-hmm. Well, Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences is a adventure romp set in a steampunk London, and it features a ministry which investigate the strange, the unusual, and the bizarre. And it features New Zealand's very first steampunk heroine, who is being described as James Bond in a corset. And she, through a series of unfortunate explosive events that she probably caused, ends up being demoted into the archives of the ministry, where she meets Wellington Thornhill Books.
And Wellington Thornhill Books is he's the archivist of the ministry. He's the one that takes care of all the logistics. He's the one that supplies background information. He also supplies references to other cases. And then when agents come in from the field, he catalogs everything. The book opens with him being kidnapped, or at least it's the aftermath of being kidnapped. And he discovers that he is in Antarctica, and he is being rescued by Eliza Braun. Well, during that rescue, things get rather explosive, and she is demoted down to the archives with Wellington. Wellington is used to working alone, so he has grown accustomed to things being his way in the archives, and it's also it's his haven, you know. And now this woman is coming in and disrupting everything, but as he's trying to orient her in the new lifestyle of being an archivist, they come across all these unsolved cases. And Eliza comes across one that involved her former partner, Agent Harrison Thorne. They start looking into things, reluctantly on books aside, and then that's when things start to ramp up in the book.
Mm. No, I've read the first few chapters. It's very exciting, you know, lots of explosions, which I like. So it does have a kind of, you know, action-adventure feel as well as mystery and steampunk. So I wanted to ask you about steampunk because I haven't really had any steampunk authors on the blog before.
Yay! We get firsties!
And I wondered if you could clear up the sort of basic question of what is steampunk anyway?
Well, actually, I think people are not aware that they have already seen steampunk in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It's there's a lot of stuff that's being grandfathered into steampunk now. If you've ever seen an episode of The Wild Wild West from the 1960s television, congratulations, you've seen steampunk.
Oh, okay.
If you've seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and some would argue, but that's diesel punk. It's steampunk. And I would even go further, making a connection last night when we were out locally here in Washington D.C. We went to Wolf Trap Farm Park, and there's a wonderful Tony Award-winning musical called Sweeney Todd the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. That would be considered steampunk because of one of the characters, the chair. Steampunk is about technology and about how we interface with it, and that's where I'm going to let Pip pick it up from there.
Well, I think it's about brass and gadgets and airships and goggles. It's about retrofuturism is another word for it. It's imagine if you were in the Victorian era, but steampunk steam gadgets were, you know, robots and, you know, all sorts of nifty things. James Bond, but powered by steam.
It's about innovation as well. I mean, the industrial age was a very innovative time, and not to get too lost in the technical aspect of it. Charles Babbage created the difference engine, but he also had plans to create an analytical engine. The difference engine was more or less a giant calculator, but the analytical engine was an actual working computer. It had a monitor, it had a printer, it had memory. It had expandable memory. It had a keyboard. And this is back in the 1800s. And it was all steam powered. But the difference engine never really caught on as a gadget. And what steampunk likes to do is go, well, what if it did? And what if Babbage actually built his analytical engine? But the thing about steampunk that I think makes it work is when people not necessarily use steampunk as a backdrop, but actually make that an integral part of the plot. When you see people interfacing with the technology, it's not just a set dressing. I've read some steampunk where that's all it is. And to me, that's not steampunk. Steampunk to me is when you actually have people working with the technology, incorporating the technology, and maybe even seeing people abuse and pervert that technology. So
which may or may not happen in Ministry.
Which may or may not happen in Ministry. We could tell you, but then we have to kill you. But that's part of the fun of steampunk.
You missed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, that's another one. Any of the classic works of H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, people consider that steampunk. The Jules Verne and H.G. Wells are considered the founding fathers of steampunk. So if you were to pull out that 1950s Walt Disney 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you've seen steampunk.
Right. So it's a kind of science fiction stroke fantasy. Would that be?
Yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of arguments about whether it's science fiction or fantasy.
Yeah. And then there's even arguments within the community about, well, that's steampunk, but then we have diesel punk, and then we have atom punk, and then we have retro punk, and then we have rice punk.
And who cares if people enjoy it? That's the point.
It's steampunk, it's all stemming from steampunk.
Yeah.
And and it's and I think that steampunk people are talking about how it's getting ready to go. It's mainstream now. And I would disagree. I think it's got a
I don't think it's mainstream until my dad goes, "Oh yes, I've got steampunk novel."
Yeah, exactly.
Like he does with fantasy,
Everybody needs that connecting work that makes them go, "Oh, okay, then I know what steampunk is." My father, for example, was flipping through S.V. Chambers and Jeff Vandermeer's Steampunk Bible,
which is a great thing to read if you don't.
It's a fantastic primer. It's a fantastic primer. And when he saw a reference to the Wild Wild West, he goes, "Oh, that's steampunk," and then it clicked.
Okay, got you. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you about writing a series. So there's one Ministry novel out. There's another one coming. I imagine there's some more going on. And I'm particularly struggling myself at the moment with this whole series idea. Can you explain how you plan a series and how you do all the continuation stuff between the books?
I think that's an excellent time for Pip to step up. Talk a little bit about the books of the Order. And also talk about and then we can talk a little bit about Ministry.
Well, the thing I found with writing this book and then Spectre and Geist is that you've got to have some point. Every book has to have a conclusion, a high point, a thing that the action is all drawing towards. And I prefer the books where there are definite conclusions to each book, but there's also an overarching something else going on. Like in the Ministry, that case is dealt with, but there are also the dangling little plot threads that suggest that there's something else, a bigger picture going on. And I've done that hopefully with the books of the Order as well. There's a problem, it gets solved, but there's also more that goes on into the next one. And the joy of writing a second book is that you allude to what you've taught people in the first book, but you don't have to go into quite as much detail because they're like, okay, yeah, you've given me a gentle reminder of what happened in the first book, but you don't have to spend quite as much time explaining it to me again.
Perhaps the biggest challenge, at least for me, when writing a sequel and continuing a series, is you want to have, and this is what the audience expects, they want to have that same feel, and they want to have that same fun, and they want to have the same discovery that they had in the first book, but they want something brand new. They want it to be totally different,
but the same.
And yeah, exactly. And it becomes sort of you do a balancing act, and that was the hardest part for me back in the day when I was doing the Billabub Batting's Mysteries, and when we were working on the sequel for Ministry, which is called Of Cogs and Corsets. We wanted to have that same witty banter. We wanted to have that same chemistry between Wellington and Eliza, but it couldn't be as backbiting because at the end of the book, they do come to an agreement of, well, we've got to make this partnership work.
Yeah, I think the characters have got to evolve through each book.
And otherwise, if it doesn't, it just becomes, okay, here's yet another, it's a bit like
mystery of the day.
Yeah, it's like the Transformers movies. I mean, can you really say Winicki, Shia LaBeouf's character, which you can't even remember? So Sam, yeah. I mean, has Sam really grown over the past 3 movies, He's gone from one hot girlfriend to another hot girlfriend. That's not really growth, okay?
But he's still being chased by
still being chased by giant robots. Whoopie flip and do, and that's but that's the thing, is that people want something new, but then they want something fresh, and they still want that same old feel, And I think that was one of the reasons why the Harry Potter books worked on so many levels, because with J.K. Rowling's series, the kids got older, and their entire outlook changed on things.
Well, that's a good example of how each book has a mystery, something to find out, and then there's also the Voldemort thing that's going on in the background. So.
But going back to, again, the characters evolving, I remember in the 5th book, when the 5th book came out, Order of the Phoenix, J.K. Rowling caught a lot of heat from the fans because they're going, but Harry's so whiny. He's complaining all the time. He's just really angsty. I'm like, yeah, he's a teenager. He's a teenager now. The hormones are kicking in. I remember being slightly angsty. I mean, I know I didn't go full goth, but I was slightly angsty.
Imagine that.
No, you don't want to.
So, do you think now that publishers and perhaps even the public want series, novels? I mean, is there a place for standalone novels anymore when authors need to make a living, and do publishers want series?
It seems to be the current trend is that they don't want to sign you for just one book. They want at least 2. So, I mean, from the publisher's point of view, I guess they're thinking, well, if this goes gangbusters, then we're going to have to pay you more money. And so they kind of want to lock you in at least for two books. For the books of the Order, they signed for 2 books, and then when Geist came out, I think it was out for 2 weeks, they came back for another 2. So I think that's the way that it's going, especially for genre.
I think also that the publishers want a series. They want that continuing adventures of characters that people grow to love, but they also will not want to commit to a 9-book series if that's how you're pitching it to people. I've seen this. I've seen people pitch 6, 9, 12-book series to publishers, and I'm looking at them like, really? Really?
Well, the thing that happened with the Ministry is that they signed us for 2 books, but they also said, give us some vague ideas about what you would do in books 3, 4, whatever.
And we actually gave them ideas for 5 books. And I think that's the way authors should go. They should plan for more books down the line, but they should expect to sell it as a 2 to maybe 3-book series. And something else I think authors need to expect, too, is that if something does go gangbusters, they may find it harder to sell new property or new material, because I noticed that a lot of times authors will establish themselves with a series. They'll try something new, and then suddenly they're back in the series that they originally started writing in. And that's sort of a two-edged sword of success. I mean, people know you for that work, but you don't necessarily want to be a one-trick pony.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of the perils that authors find themselves in.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, it is. No, it's a terrible thing when you're like you, where you've got you've got a lot of got all the plates spinning in the air. But
yeah, let's talk about that a minute, because you both have all kinds of things going on. And do you now call yourself, both of you, professional authors, or are you doing other day jobs, or what's going on?
I think we're both professional authors. But
I'm part-time and Pip's full-time. I still have a day job. I have a day job that is very secure, has benefits.
All those things being a full-time writer doesn't have.
and the rule that I've given Pip is once together, if together we are making more than what I am making now in my full-time job, then we can both go full-time. Until then, one of us has to have a full-time job. And that does make it a lot harder for me to get writing done, but I'm still making the time to write. It's a matter of priorities. I talk about this with Pip. I talk about this with my parents. But for me, the priority is my kid, and then the house, and then my writing. It's really that's the way it goes. And for the snobs who say, well, then you're not really a writer, I say, screw you. I make the time. And on top of that, it is harder for me to produce, but the point is I'm still producing. Where it's been getting tricky of late is that along with the ministry and promoting the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences, Pip and I are producing a podcast to go with it called Tales from the Archives. And that's been a lot of fun to produce. And it's one of the few steampunk short story venues that's out there in the potosphere. So that's been fun. But again, it's time consuming. And you just have to learn how to balance the priorities.
Yeah, and I think most people listening to this will have day jobs and will be trying to write. So I think everyone's with you, on that. But of course, Pip, you've moved only in the last 18 months into that.
Yeah, I was in New Zealand in October, so the whole being able to take myself anywhere in the world. Excuse me, I've got some frog in my throat.
Yeah.
I'm choking up. Yeah, so being able to do a full-time writing thing is being good because it gives me flexibility. So I just have to keep producing books and selling them, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask about the co-authoring thing. I mean, clearly, what is that like? I mean, how do you work together, and does it reflect your relationship?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's video, so we can actually demonstrate.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
They're like Angry Birds. Well, I mean, I have more collaboration experience than Pip does, and I can compare it between my first experience writing and my most recent experience of writing, and a lot of it goes back to communication, is being able to communicate openly and communicate freely with your partner, even across distances. What we're using right now, Skype. Skype was the great levelator for Pip and myself when we were writing Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences, and Phoenix Rising, the first book in the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences series. And when Pip moved to the United States, we then had to sort of shift our schedules, because instead of Pip being in one hemisphere and writing then while I slept, and then me writing while Pip slept, which was roughly 24 hours solid of production, we then had to work in the same space.
Yeah.
That was
efficiency went down. It was terrible.
Efficiency went down in production, but in development, we were able to just go up to each other and go, hey, what did you mean by XYZ?
So it was sort of ups and downs, really.
Mm-hmm.
It was much easier in the editing process, I think, being in the same place.
Yes.
And you got to be not afraid to say, I don't like this, and that kind of makes the other person defend their choices and saying, well, this shows character development, blah, 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 blah. So, and in the brainstorming side of things, it's always nice to have someone and you're just like, okay, what are we going to do? And then the ideas started zinging between us about, what was going to happen. So it's lots of fun.
There is a give and take, though. I mean, if
there was a bit I got you to dial back.
Yeah, and we're still getting criticism for that. And then there's and it's funny because you do the erotica podcast and you were telling me to dial that back. That's the part I find even funnier. But what happened? People said, "Oh, well, that's probably Pip's influence on tea." I'm like,
blamed
"What?"
Me.
Yeah, that was good fun. But no, it does come back to compromise as well. There are some things that Pip really wanted in of Cogs and Corsets, and I said that's fine. And then when I wanted something in Cogs and Corsets, Pip said, "I'm not sure I'm behind that." And I go, "Oh, wait a second." And we had to, it's bartering at the table. Only unlike the United States Congress, we get things done, and that's part of that's part of the relation of the writing process. And you really do have to think. You have to think ahead. You have to think ahead, and you have to think about, well, how are we going to be working together several miles down the road? And something else I think is kind of a misnomer too is that at one time the publisher was telling us that we shouldn't use both our names because they wouldn't know where to shelve the book. Well, sure enough, they have been shelving the book under B for Ballantine because B comes first over M, and Pip's name comes first. So basically, top billing. Barnes and Noble hasn't screwed it up too badly. So we're not
It's nice to see them all together with Spectre and Geist,
In fact, we've posted several times pictures on Twitter and on Facebook where you see, right next to Ian Banks, you see Geist, Spectre, and Ministry, and that's nice company to keep. Oh, and Paolo next to Paolo's book. It's nice company to be in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I also wanted to ask, I don't know you guys too well, but we've interacted over a couple of years now. And how much of you two is in Eliza and Wellington? Because there seems to be a few similarities going on there.
Well, the dialogue was the easiest bit to write.
You constantly hear these authors talk about Mary Sue and Gary Stew characters, blah 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 blah. If they're saying that there's not a piece of them in the characters they write, they are lying.
I mean, every character's got a little bit of you, something of you in there.
Yeah.
Eliza is far more rash than I would ever be. She's far braver than I would ever be.
And Wellington, I would say, is a lot more conservative than I am.
Yeah.
And he's better organized than I am.
I think the snark is probably out.
The snark is there, and also I do see some other similarities of Wellington that I see is that Wellington, when you get him around gadgets, he has a kind of a childlike wonder, and he also likes to make sure that when he makes something work or he figures out when something works, he wants it to stay working. And
he doesn't have a hissy fit though when something breaks down.
No, he doesn't. Maybe I'll write that. Maybe I'll write that in book 3.
Book 3, he's gonna start kicking things.
But and Eliza, Eliza also is very homesick for New Zealand. Last night at this production of Sweeney Todd, we ran into an usher who was from Christchurch, and so he and Pip started talking. So all morning it's been like, God, I miss New Zealand. I miss New Zealand. And there's a chapter in the book where Eliza, drunk, basically is going, I want to go home, and he goes, I brought you home to New Zealand, and then she starts breaking out into the New Zealand national anthem, and I'm waiting for that later today. I'm waiting to come home. God of nations at our feet.
Oh well, now it's tax deductible trips home, right? If you put it in the novel,
tax deductible trips.
As long as I keep writing New Zealand characters.
We have an open invitation to do a book signing at the Weta Cave. Because they're also very big into steampunk, and
actually they've got a connection with HarperCollins now.
They do have a connection with HarperCollins. So yeah,
marvelous. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you about the whole publishing stuff because you guys have been in podcasting, so you've done a lot of independent things. Now you've got this multi-book deals, and you're pro authors, and you're out there.
Yeah.
You're really important and impressive. So what do you think about the whole indie ebook, Kindle success, and what are you guys going to do in the future?
Well, you go first.
Well, for me, I like to have my fingers in a lot of different pies. So I'm doing some independent publishing for myself. Publishing Erotica a la carte is going to be coming as an ebook very shortly on the Kindle, and then I'll work on the other avenues. And then big publishing, Pie Accounts is a good size.
Pie Accounts is big publishing.
Yeah, so 3 publishers there that I'm working with. So I'm getting to see a lot of different sides. And of course, we've had our experiences with Dragon Moon Press for quite a few years. I don't think someone's mentioned a tag like hybrid writer. They're spreading their, I think it's spreading risk. All good companies spread risk by getting into various areas, and I think that's my attitude towards it, is that no one knows what's going to happen, so I'm just like...
Right. Yeah. My experiences with working with a small house, and my limited experiences, because I'm being honest about it, I've only been a large house published author for 4 months, maybe. I mean, the book came out in May.
But you've been working them since May last year.
Well, since May of last year. But I'm talking about actually when the book comes out, because really, when you talk about working with publishers, or when you talk about the book industry, we look less at what happens behind the scenes. We look less at the pitching and the editorial process. We look at how the book is when it comes out. So I'm looking at my experiences with publishers when my independent publisher book came out, and then when my corporate published book came out, which has only been about 3 months. But I've already seen a massive difference between 3 months versus several years with an indie house. And what I have seen is that authors who are pounding the pulpit and saying, legacy publishing, God, what a pretentious term. Legacy publishing is dead. Long live the indie. Well, funny thing about that was that when I came on as an indie published author, I remember these same voices were saying, well, you don't be recognized until you are a properly published author. Now these same authors are pounding the indie house. And what they don't see, and what I see a lot of new authors who are getting into this don't see, is what Amanda Hawking said, who, she became the poster child for a while for indie houses, for indie publishers. But she herself said when she signed her 6-figure deal with St. Martin's, she said, I don't want to be doing what I'm doing right now. I don't want to be marketing. I don't want to be pushing. I don't want to be promoting. I want to be writing. And right now, as an indie author, that's all I'm doing. I haven't written in 3 months. And you know what? I need to write, because that's what writers do. You have to find that fine line between both. And I think that people who are so easily pushing aside the larger houses, they don't realize how much work goes into promoting a book. Even Pip, when she saw some of the stuff that I had from my years of Dragon Moon Press, she was like, you were working it, And I'm like, you had to. You still have to. But the difference is it's easier when you're with a larger house. When you're with a larger house, a perfect example is when Pip and I were we were at the airport, and I saw my book in the airport, and I came running up to Pip going, I found my book in the airport. You mean our book? Yeah. Let's go for a quick book signing. And we literally walked around the concourse of the airport, and we found our book in 2 different stores, and we did a
and then we found it in San Francisco.
We found it in San Francisco. Distribution and being on the shelf, that's something you'll never have as an indie publisher or as an exclusive e-publisher. And really, you can't dismiss the traditional publishing venues. You just can't, because they are still the way people get books. And what's happening here in America with Borders, people are going, well, this is the death knell. This is the death knell of the bookstore. No, it's the death knell of Borders, because I'm working on a blog post right now where I talk about Borders from a customer experience and an author experience. I'm not surprised Borders is going under.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the people who are losing their jobs, but it does not come as a surprise.
I think that was more bad business practice rather than killing Borders.
No, absolutely. So I guess what we're generally saying is maybe portfolio author, or as you say, doing different things is a good idea. But
like author like that. We're going to use that one.
And I think and it's funny. I feel like, given that I have a day job as well, T, I think of myself as I have a portfolio career. I'm a slash writer, consultant slash writer, and I think that's fair enough. We should all be looking at different things, and what I hate most is the snobbery from any end. Somebody saying absolutely. They're better than somebody else because of X or Y. So I think now is a good time from either end. So
I don't mind going on a limb and saying this. There was a term I heard someone use concerning big house authors. It is called house slave. What an offensive term. I'm like, really? And knowing the history of this one author, he's got no reason to say house slave, because he's written some media tie-ins. And I'm just saying, no, I'm sorry.
The writer, why are writers attacking each other? I hate fanaticism in any form.
Yeah.
And so when people start saying, well, ebooks are the only way, and other people start saying, yes, well, you've got to stick with the big houses. Why do you have to pick and choose?
You don't.
You can be all things. You know?
It's like when to kind of bring it back. It's like something that all three of us know. Podcasting. Many years ago in 2005, when this was coming out, the big pulpit to pound then was, oh, this is the future, and it's going to replace traditional, tired, old media. And what the traditional media venues are finding out is, well, actually, we need this too. Even though we don't have to give it much attention. And now here we are, 6 years later, and we're kind of looking at it now, going, no, we actually need each other. Because traditional media needs podcasting, they need blogging, they need social networking to be able to communicate with people that are going to become the digital natives. And then you need people like podcasters and bloggers that need traditional media because they have the clout and they have the distribution that they don't have. I can do a podcast for my day job, and people will think, oh, it's great. But until it gets syndicated by Forbes or CNN, then all of a sudden it gets credibility. And that's where we are with publishing right now. We don't necessarily need to exclude one or the other. We need to figure out that fine line where we can make all this work together.
Absolutely. So live and let live. I think that's probably the motto.
And buy our books.
In whatever format you like.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, so I guess we're out of time. So why don't you tell us where we can find you and your books?
Well, he's going to get the bell out. I apologize in advance. Well, you can find out more about the ministry, including the audio podcast short stories with people like Nathan Lowell and Phil Rossi and Jack Mangan at ministryofpeculiaroccurrences.com. And then you can find out more about my Books of the Order at booksoftheorder.com. And pjballantine.com is where you can find everything me.
And then as far as myself, there is tmorris.com. And then if you want to know what I do with my day job, I don't mind giving a plug for my day job. I am the social media manager for idguardian.com. And
He'll keep you safe.
Yeah, I'll keep you safe. Don't worry, I'll keep you safe.
Marvelous. Okay, well, thanks ever so much for your time, guys. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Thank you.